Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be sharing with you all the detailed process on how to cut and sew this free Bubu gown right here. So it's giving simplicity and classy, right? So this is a gown that can actually be worn when you want to keep it simple but also give this rich anti vibes look. Okay, so I'll be sharing with you a detailed process on how I went about this. I also used a velvet bias for the neckline designs and also on the hem of my sleeves. So it has this slit at both sides, and the fabric I use is actually called a crepe fabric. If this sounds like something you're interested in learning how to make, please continue watching. Don't also forget to subscribe to my channel. Let's just get started. I used about 2 yards of this curve fabric to achieve my Bubu dress, and you can see it has a black and blue background, and also I have my velvet bias for the neckline design and for the sleeve design. So I'm going to start folding from one border to the other. So actually I'm going to have 4 folds because I want to cut out the front part of my gown and the back part of my gown at the same time. So I made my first fold and I'm going to fold in again to get my second fold. So altogether I have 4 folds. So you are meant to measure the largest part of your body, either your hip circumference or your bust circumference. You divide it by 4 before you fold. But when I did mine, it wasn't up to that because my sleeve length was a bit longer. All right, so I had to divide my shoulder by 2, which is 8 inches, plus 10 inches, which is the length of my sleeve. It wasn't still enough. I had to fold in more inches of fabric, as you can see right here. So from there I'll make my second fold. So now I'll measure that to get 18 inches, and when I did that it was even more than 8 inches, and that is perfectly okay. So I'm going to start by ruling a line now at the top of this my fabric, which is going to serve as my shoulder line and also my starting line. By the time I do that, from that my starting line, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches from this other end. They're not from the center front. All right, from this other end I came down by 1.5 inches and slightly connected it into that my starting line or my shoulder line. So you see this other chalk mask which I have right here was refusing to come off, so please just ignore that particular chalk mark and just focus on what I'll be doing right here. Okay, so now from the center front of my fabric, I'm going to measure my shoulder, which is 8 inches. I made a mark right there, as you can see. So from that 8 inches, I'm going to mark my sleeve length of 10 inches and add extra half of an inch for my hemming. Okay, so it was just very close to the end of this my fabric. So from that point I'm going to mark 10 inches. So this is like your sleeve length or your armhole. Okay, so connect these 2 points together this way. So I'll move over now to create my neckline. So because no zipper will be added to this dress, it needs to be free for you to wear from your head. So for the neck width I marked 3.5 inches, and for the neck depth I marked 2 inches. So the neck depth, which for the back is usually higher than that of the front. Okay, so this neck depth I have right here of 2 inches is for our back neck depth. So the next I'll also place my tape on that starting line, and I'm going to mark 6 inches, which I want to use as my front neck depth. So I'm going to connect this way in a slanting manner from my neck width to that 6 inches, as you can see I've done right here. So right now I have 2 necklines. So the next thing which I'm going to do right now is to make all these lines visible, which I'll also place my tape on that my starting line, and I'm going to mark my bust point of 13 inches. I'll connect that point into a straight line. So I'll divide my bust circumference by 4. I'll mark what I have right there. I'll add 2 inches for allowance and then 1 inch for stitching allowance. So from that point I'm going to create a curve this way to meet that point which I have on my 10 inches for my armhole or my sleeve length. So now I'll place my tape on my shoulder line from my starting line and get my half length of 17 inches. I'll count 9 inches downward and get my hip length of 26 inches. So all these points I connected into a very straight line. So the next thing is to get my the length of my gown. So the length of this fabric I'm working, the entire length of the fabric I'm working with is actually 56 inches. So I'm going to make use of the entire length of this fabric. Okay, so I place my hip length on to get my full length, and like I said, I'm using the entire length of this fabric. So right now I'll come to my my half length, sorry. I'll divide my half length by 4. I marked what I have right there. I will add 2 inches extra for ease, and then 1 inch for stitching allowance. All right, so I don't want this dress to be extremely big, but if you want yours a little bit fitted, you can just add 1 inch for ease. Okay, so now under my hip line, I divided my hip circumference by 4. I added 2 inches for ease, and then 1 inch for stitching allowance, as you can see right here. So I'm going to connect all of these points this way. Then the points which I have on my hip, I'm just going to extend it downward to the end of this my fabric. So you can see I use my ruler, or you can use your free hand, whichever that is okay for you. So by the time I did all of these connections, I now went ahead to cut out. So that is how simple it is for you to actually achieve this particular Bubu gown. It's really simple. Okay, so I'm going to cut out exactly the way which I have drafted right here. So on the shoulder area, while you are cutting out, please, you don't cut out exactly on that slanted line. You have to go up by half of an inch for the joining allowance, because by the time you join the front and your back shoulder, you need to, you'll be short of fabric actually. So just cut out for the round neckline for the back, and you remove one of the piece, just as I've done right here. So the one where I have my chalk marks is the one I'm folding again, so that I can go ahead and cut out my front neckline. And please do note that all these chalk marks are on the wrong side of my fabric. So after cutting out my front neckline, now I turned it over to the right side, and you can see those chalk marks again. So I'm going to use this my bias to actually pipe the neckline. So you're going to place your bias this way. You open it up, okay, and place it on the neckline of your dress this way. So I'm going to stitch. By the time I make my first stitch, I'll take it inside and make my second stitch. So I'll do it for the front and the back neckline. So guys, after doing this is what I have. So this is the wrong side of my fabric, this is the front part of my gown. So this is the wrong side and this is the right side of my fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do is to fix this my velvet bias. So this is totally optional. I just felt like adding it to just be a little bit extra. Okay, so now, because this is a v-neck line, at that point you're going to find it a bit difficult to curve this to your velvet bias. So all you're going to do is to like raise it up and pleat it. You can see what I'm doing right here. Bring up about half of an inch this way and pleat it on top of that your bias, so that you can have this v neckline perfectly in shape. So this is just a normal thing to do, because if you're trying to curve it out, it's not going to give you that full v neckline effect. So you just have to raise it up by half an inch slightly this way and pleat it on top of this velvet bias, just as I've done right here. So you can see the v neckline is really pronounced. So this is what you're going to do, and I went ahead to pin mine, and then you go ahead and stitch on top of this velvet bias all around, okay, following the shape. So do it for the front and the back, and here is what I have. So the next is to join my front and my back gown together on the shoulder. So I went ahead now to place them, making sure they align properly, and now I'll pin. By the time I pin, I'll just go ahead and join my shoulder using that half of an inch which I told you earlier to leave while you are cutting out. Okay, so stitch after stitching, you're just going to come to the sleeve part and now fold in the allowance you left for your folding for your sleeve. Okay, so I've done all of that. I've stitched, and you can see what I have right here, and I also stitched my sleeve. So I'll let her go ahead to weave the shoulder part of this my gown. So what is left now is the sides of this gown, which I'm going to stitch right here. So I did this by arranging my gown, the right side, sorry, the front part and the back part together this way. I make sure that it's aligned exactly on that part on the sleeve. So I'm going to pin all the way to the end of this my gown. But remember that we have a slit at the both sides of this gown, right? So by the time I pin, I'm going to measure the length of my slit from the ends of my gown. So I'm going to be using 1.5 inches for the hemming of this my gown. So it will all determine my slit length. So I marked 17 inches as my slit length. So when I fold in 1.5 inches, I'll be having 15.5 inches as my slit length. All right, so you can just measure out the length of your slits. Okay, so now from that end of my sleeve, I started marking 1 inch, which is for my stitching allowance. So when I get to that my slit length where I marked my chalk, I'm going to raise one part of my dress, just raise one part and fold it twice. As you can see, I'm illustrating right here. So just fold it twice, don't stitch the both together to achieve your slit. Okay, so you stitch, and after stitching, this is what I have, and this was the explanation I was trying to give you all right here. So I'll flip this now to the wrong side, and you can see what I have. So the only thing left is to actually fold the hem of this our gown. So you go ahead and fold that and iron this out properly, and you will love the outcome. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in my next one. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Bye.